Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of r/ProRevenge. In today's episode, I would like a raise, and time off, and topsy-turvy. Manager insists I do my job properly. Happy to comply, sir. Before we get started, make sure to subscribe so you will never miss a video. So let's get started. I would like a raise, and time off, and I want to start this off by clarifying that it is not my story. It's the story of someone very close to me, and I will leave out a large amount of specific detail because quite a bit of info is not mine to reveal. The build-up to the revenge is that this person had a horrible employer. She worked HR and managed payroll at what was effectively a nursing home. I don't know that they call themselves that, but it's what they are. The company had a bit of a good old boys club going on, with all of the highest level management being older men, who all did less work and got more pay than pretty much everyone else. There were regular complaints from women about being mistreated, and many women were fired for absolutely absurd reasons, followed by their male co-workers getting raises. That in and of itself was bad, but it's not what instigated the need for revenge. What caused the burning desire to get back at the company was when the company fired my friend's manager, who was a woman, because she took a week off after literally breaking a leg, badly. The HR department was already badly understaffed, so my friend had to take on the responsibilities of this manager, without any pay bonus. She requested a pay bonus multiple times, denied each time. A month or so later, the company hires a new manager to replace the old one, at nearly twice the salary. This new manager is an older man. I'm not entirely sure what this guy actually did during the day, because my friend continued to do all of the managerial tasks, and she knows that for a fact because the guy's account didn't have access to the systems he needed access to, and he never asked for that access. For 6 months, my friend showed this manager issues with their system, including payroll, and explained that she was not only the only employee who knew how to use the payroll system, but she was the only one with access to it. The douchebag ignored her, and made regular comments about how she was replaceable and useless. One day, she loses her shit. She set up a bot with her credentials to automatically assign her pay each pay period, according to her actual salary, so not stealing or anything. She then carefully plans her next move, and puts in her 2-week notice, right before a large department-wide week off, and right before her only coworker has a 2-week vacation. She wouldn't have time to train the coworker even if the coworker was in the country. The manager still dismissed her, thinking he could just hire someone who knew what they were doing. Little did he know, she had tweaked with the payroll software over her time there. Nothing super awful, but it was very different from what the base software was. She was the only person who knew how to properly use it, and the only person in the whole company, including the CEO, who had access to the necessary numbers to actually run the payroll. When she leaves, after the 2 weeks, the company has 2 whole pay periods where they do not pay their employees. They can't. But my friend still gets paid, because they never disabled her automatic payment thing. They couldn't. Eventually they called her and basically begged her to consult with them on their payroll. For the past 6 months she has been paid $250 an hour, for 5 hours a week, to run the company's payroll. Fully remote, even though it was an in-person job before. And to top it all off, she doesn't even actually work the 5 hours. She wrote a script on her personal device to process payroll for her. She just has to press one button. She's working another job now, she really kicked them in the ass for their shit. Topsy-turvy. I started dating a girl about 7 years ago. When we met, she was getting up on her feet and trying to find her way in life. I let my imagination take over and started envisioning her potential and what kind of life we would have together. I had never had the feeling of disarmed punch-drunk love that I had for her, and that probably clouded my judgment. Throughout our time together, she would reach out and ask for money for things, repairing a car, paying a bill, etc. We were getting closer the longer we dated, and I would always help her, assuming that I was making an investment in both of our lives by helping her through a period of instability. In all, I probably gave her about $15,000. After about 4 years of this, I finally popped the question. She accepted and we were married after a brief engagement. About 6 months into our marriage, she told me she had been having car trouble and needed about $2,000 for the repair. This struck me as a bit odd. By that time, I was more than familiar with her vehicle and knew her explanation for what the issue was didn't make sense. One evening after she went to sleep, I went and had a look at the part of the car she had said was faulty. No issue. This set off alarms. I grabbed her phone and, on a hunch, typed in the amount she had asked for, and it returned a text message with a guy she had previously dated. Apparently, he had reached out and asked for help repairing his car, and lo and behold, he had asked for the same amount she had requested from me. My stomach turned as the thought entered my mind that maybe I had subsidized other of this guy's expenses across the time I had dated my wife. As I read through the messages further, I realized that this guy was the Lester Diamond to my Sam Rothstein, and I had been played like a fool. Look up that reference if you're not familiar. I had spent my entire relationship as a proxy sugar daddy. I thought on this for a few weeks and tried to figure out what to do next. These sacrifices were not insignificant to me. I had been working as a surgical resident for much of our courtship, making very little money and working long hours to form a strong, solid foundation for our future. This was devastating, and I realized that I couldn't reconcile the situation. Once I had cooled down, I waited for an evening. My wife went to bed early and I got into her phone. I caught up on the most recent messages she and her paramour had sent one another. Then I initiated a conversation with him. I posed as her and told him she had been drinking, she is a recovering alcoholic, and that she needed to get some things off her chest. I didn't go overboard, but I did send messages to the effect that she was not over him and that her affections had grown since marrying me. I all but teed him up to move in for a relationship with her. I then abruptly ended the chat and asked that we not talk about the conversation again in order to avoid furthering her relapse, but that we both keep in mind what we had spoken about and see if we could make a life together work. I then deleted the texts from her phone and hoped the two would proceed forward together. They did. I kept an eye on the texts for the next few months and progressively saw things heat up between them until it looked like she was committed to leaving me. We didn't have many assets together at the time, as I was still finishing a surgical residency, so I knew the divorce would be quick and painless and that we would go our separate ways and she would start a new life with the guy whose underachievements I had been funding. So I filed for divorce and had her served papers. I was generous with the $10,000 in assets between us in order to make the split as quick as possible and went on our ways to begin life anew. And you'd think that is the end of the story, right? Oh no, friend, you see, Mama didn't raise a cuck. In our state, not only are assets separated upon marital severance, but so are debts. And medical school is expensive, really expensive, $250,000 expensive. So, she ended up with a parting gift of about $125,000 of my student loans. And guess who she shotgun married 2 months after our divorce? Fortunately for her, she'll only have to pay half of that amount, because if history does indeed repeat itself, he'll be paying the other half once their marriage ends as well. It was all I could do to not send them a piggy bank as a wedding gift. Best $15,000 I ever spent. Manager insists I do my job properly. Happy to comply, sir. Preface. In early 2020, I was hired under the title assistant manager at a local automotive shop. We mainly sold tires, if you're American, and alloy wheels for passenger vehicles. The company owned several stores, so I reported directly to my manager, who then reported to the owner of the company. Shortly after I was hired, I noticed the behavior of the manager was far from professional. He would constantly mock and berate me for being the new guy. I believe part of this was jealousy and insecurity on his part. As I ended up recording more sales under my name within the first few months, he would also knock off work early and start drinking beer whilst the rest of us continued to work. I remember when he found out that I participated in MMA training sessions after work, he tried to goad me into a fight for his own amusement. Clearly, this guy didn't like me, and I was starting to get the feeling that he was trying to get me to snap or lose my cool, and as a result, my employment. I became even more certain of that with what happened next. Story. During the few months that I had worked there, I had noticed that our takings for the day and sales records did not match. I would often spend half an hour to an hour after work trying to figure out where the errors were coming from, whilst the manager would simply throw his hands in the air and exclaim that he had no idea how this was happening. The recurring issue seemed to be that our cash takings had been recorded incorrectly. There would sometimes be an excess amount of cash that didn't match up to what was recorded on our sales/invoicing software. Other times, there would be less. I was, at the time, an accounting student studying towards my bachelor's degree. I was already suspicious of the cash being out each day. However, given how the manager had been treating me up until this point, I was concerned that any complaint would somehow be twisted and used against me. And boy, was I right. Several weeks later, my manager took some time off. During this time, I managed a personal record in store sales, and also noticed something interesting. The cash was never out at the end of each shift. I reported this directly to the owner of the company. Given I was acting manager during the time my manager was away, I was expected to report to the owner every day, and explained what had been occurring whilst the manager was there. In all honesty, I was hopeful that the owner would be having a word with the manager about the discrepancies. However, I was also wary, as I believed once the owner spoke to my manager, that the manager will immediately know it was me who reported this. When the manager returned to work, he immediately approached me with a disgruntled look on his face. "I've spoken with the owner. You tried to blame me for the discrepancies? You should focus on doing your job properly, then this wouldn't happen." I was quite taken aback by how angry he was, though I wasn't surprised that he twisted it and tried to place blame on me. Given his reaction, I'm even more suspicious at this point. He wants me to do my job properly, eh? Malicious compliance ensues. That same week, I got to work. I started paying attention to what customers were paying when they were dealing with my manager. Behind his back, I began examining all of his sale transactions and invoices with a fine comb. As the days rolled by, I started to find evidence of his dishonesty. When it came to a few cash sales, my manager was doing the following. Example. Would tell the customer the price is $200 if he pays cash. Would discount the price by $50 in the sale/invoicing software. Would put the extra cash into the till and record a $150 cash sale. Before we did the cash up at the end of the day, he would sneakily pocket this extra cash whilst no one was around. Though he was very foolish, as he clearly couldn't remember the exact amount he had swindled. Hence why the cash would be up some days, didn't swindle enough, or the cash would be down, swindled too much. End. I took screenshots of the discounts he had been giving on sales and sent them to the business owner, along with a report. A report with a detailed description of my findings. The report also showed that on all days he wasn't there for the cash count, there was no variance. When he was there, well. The owner was infuriated. This man had been his trusted employee for years. The owner was so infuriated, in fact, that he ordered my manager do a mandatory drug test, in a cup style, on the same day he found out. And no surprises, he failed. Turns out the manager had quite the meth habit. This was most likely his sole motive for stealing cash, and the owner was beside himself. We operate machinery every day in this store, and so the thought of a manager walking around high as a kite wouldn't sit well with any health and safety professional. In fact, it could have landed the owner in serious legal trouble if any accident or injury occurred under this manager's watch. The manager was terminated immediately for violation of his contract, and was later taken to court by the owner in an attempt to recover the stolen funds. Safe to say, I was promoted to store manager position shortly after his termination. If you made it to the end of the video, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share, and we will see you in the next video.